All right, academic astronomy, welcome back. This is Mr. Krug coming at you live here as we start to explore the springtime sky. So in class, right before the quarantine, we were starting to learn this sky. And so your job is going to be plotting this out on your SCO1 and your SCO1T constellation charts. And then you're going to screenshot both and send them to me, 10 points per chart. So this vocab list is attached to all the material that you're going to need. And remember, here in academic astronomy, we do the slightly longer left-hand side. And don't forget your 4 steps down here at the bottom because they are definitely going to be part of your grade for this one. So let's go ahead and get started. So first, we're going to do the easier chart. Now here I have one of the newer charts because Sky and Publishing for some reason changed the name. Yours probably says SCO01. These newer ones just say SCO1, but you can see exactly what chart it is. And by this point, everybody, you will already have your summer, your fall, and your winter skies plotted. So the spring sky is going to be your very last sky. So step 1, pick a color that you haven't used on the other seasons and go ahead and outline your constellations. First up, we have Cancer, who in mythology was a crab. Now, we have 2 dim constellations on the spring sky. Cancer is very dim, and the reason it is of significance is it is one of the constellations of the zodiac, which doesn't mean as much to us today, but to astrologers of the Middle Ages, even though there were no bright stars, you can see the sun's path, called the ecliptic, passes right through it. So they thought that that was especially significant. Overall, it looks a lot like the shape of a Mercedes-Benz hood ornament or a peace sign, and these are supposed to be the legs of the crab. Next up, bringing in spring with a mighty roar, we have Leo the lion, one of the most famous constellations on the whole night sky. Very, very visible at this time of year. This part right here, which we'll learn, is an asterism called the sickle. This represents the head and mane of the lion, and then the triangle back here is the lion's tail. Below that, and don't forget this part, we'll talk about her in a little bit, we have just the top of Virgo the maiden. It's kind of confusing how your star chart does it. So connect these 2 stars and then draw your line off the page because she's going to come back up over on the other side. Drawing back, we have possibly the largest constellation on the whole sky in terms of area. This, everybody, is Hydra the water snake. And this is usually associated with one of the 12 labors of Hercules. So hydras were particularly nasty creatures in mythology. And if you tried to kill it by cutting off the head, multiple heads would then spring forth from that stump. So the more you tried to kill it, the stronger it became. Hercules realizes this and then takes a torch, and as he cuts off each head, he then cauterizes the stump with the torch. And that is how, as the legend goes, he is eventually able to kill the Hydra. Right above the tail of the water snake, we have not 1 but 2 constellations. Both start with the letter C, both in name and mythology, and they're both relatively small, but I can attest on the real night sky they're actually quite easy to find. So this is Crater the Cup. I've also seen it called a chalice. So here's basically the drinking vessel of the cup, and then here's the base. So pulling back, this is what you should have for your spring sky on the left side of your chart. Now recall from earlier in the year, everybody, these equatorial star charts are made to connect in a big loop at the end, representing a tube of nighttime sky. So the remainder of your spring sky is over on this side. So let's start going through it. Here are the duplicates of the 2 stars from the left-hand side, and this is the remainder of the constellation Virgo. I just think V for Virgo, very conspicuous V. In mythology, she is a maiden, which means a young unmarried girl, and she is home to the very bright blue star Spica, which we'll talk about in just a little bit. Also, you can see the tail end of Hydra the water snake. And right here we have the other C constellation above it. This is Corvus the Crow, and it looks like a little trapezoid on the sky. The stars are reasonably bright, so again, it's fairly easy to find. So just remember, above the tail of the water snake, we have Crater the Cup, and then we have Corvus the Crow. Next up, try to get pumped up for this, as is planetarium tradition. For those of you who took semester astronomy, we always get very fired up about this one. This one is called Boötes. Let's all try that, everybody. Boötes. So it looks like booties, but there's actually a little German umlaut above this O right here. So it's boo like a ghost, and then otes. In mythology, Boötes was the herdsman. And what a great mythology to have for the night sky, because who are the Arabs that came up with a lot of our star names? They were herdsmen who stayed outside at night with their flocks. So I think he looks a lot like a kite or an ice cream cone. We have a very bright star at his base, which we'll talk about, called Arcturus. And then here is the dim arm of the herdsman. Next up, if you think way back to section 2, Origins of Astronomy, we actually saw this. This and probably Taurus the Bull are among the oldest constellations on Earth, because we first find them depicted in cave paintings. This was in Cueva de El Castillo cave in Spain. It dates back almost 15,000 years. This is Corona Borealis, the northern crown of stars, and it looks like a little horseshoe shape on the sky. So just think, Corona in Spanish means crown, and then Borealis is north, like Aurora Borealis is the northern lights. Corona Borealis is the northern crown of stars. We have to specify, because check it out, down here below Sagittarius the Archer, we have Corona Australis, which is the southern crown. Very dim, and from our latitude, almost impossible to see. Almost always blocked by the horizon. So we learned its brother constellation up here, Corona Borealis. Almost done. Right here, this one I would say is one of the more boring constellations of the zodiac, but it has a great mythology and story behind it. This is called Libra, and in mythology, Libra were the scales. Not like scales of a fish, but like the scales of justice that would teeter back and forth on the front of a courthouse. Now, Scorpius the Scorpion, which you darn well should have plotted from the summer sky because Scorpius is awesome. Scorpius's pincers used to be far more fierce. It actually used to extend up to here, but then in more recent times, they chopped off those pincers, made them much smaller, and made a separate constellation here called Libra the Scales. Okay, before we head to our T charts, just get one last good look. This is what you'll need on your star chart. Here are the constellations of spring over at the left. And then here they are over here on the right. You need, I believe, 9 of them total. All right, Astro Teens, let's go ahead and flip over to our T charts. So once again, notice yours might say the older name, which I much prefer, the SCOO ones. I have one of the newer ones here where they chopped off one of the zeros, so the SCO1. The biggest thing, though, everybody, make sure yours says T. This is our test chart. And so if you've been following along this year and you've been a very good Astro Teen, you should already have your summer, your fall, and your winter sky plotted. Remember, this is steps 2 through 4, and you need a lot more for these steps. So step number 2, with the same color that you used on the other chart, we want to redraw those constellations, and we want to write their names in capital letters. Also on this chart is where we're going to add our asterisms. So there's only one asterism in the spring sky, and it's right here. Please use a dotted line, and it is called the sickle. A sickle is like a big curved blade that farmers would use to harvest their grains back in the days before automated farming. So the sickle somewhat represents the head and mane of Leo the lion, and then back here is the tail. Okay, also on these charts, step 4, in lowercase letters and using a different color than what you used for the constellations, we want to put the stars and objects we need to know. So right here, even though Cancer the Crab doesn't have any bright stars, it does have one beautiful naked eye object. This is M44, the Beehive Cluster. It is a stunning open star cluster, only a couple dozen stars, right above the legs of Cancer the Crab. Experienced skywatchers know if they can't see the beehive on an otherwise clear night, a spring storm might be on the way. Now here's the confusing thing because we have so many animals over here. We've got ourselves a lion, a crab, and a bunch of bees. Don't confuse M44 with M1, the Crab Nebula. That was a supernova remnant we had above the bottom horn of Taurus the Bull. This one you couldn't see with the naked eye. This is the one the Chinese observed around the year 1064 AD. Over here, even though we're in the crab, this is the Beehive Cluster. Okay, over to Leo. Very bright star at the base of the sickle, or the lion's mane and head. This is Regulus. The silly way I remember this, I think kings are very regal, and the lion is king, so regal, Regulus, regal, Regulus. This one's a little bit trickier. It doesn't show up by proper name on the O1 charts. So if you notice on the vocab list, I give you its Bayer name. This one is Algeba because it starts with an AL. It's one of the many, many Arabic stars we have on the sky. Then out here in the lion's tail, we only learned this one in academic astronomy. That right there is Denebola. Finally, before we head over to the right side of the chart, notice here in Hydra the water snake, we do have one bright star, and it's fairly easy to find, everybody. Notice here's Sirius, brightest star in the sky. Up here is Procyon from Canis Minor. So Alfred is really the only bright star in this part of the sky. And again, here where we live, we only see to about here. So it's easy to find on a clear spring night. The silly way I remember this, I think of the butler from Batman named Alfred, and this one is Alfred. So that's the way I remember Alfred. All right, so get one last look. Here's how this side of your star chart should look. Now let's see, let's head over to the other side. Okay, for starters on this chart, let's also label Virgo on this side, even though she isn't labeled that way on the O1 chart. So notice we've got Corvus, and also label this end of Hydra the water snake. Here are Libra the scales, which should just about butt up against Scorpius the Scorpion, my favorite constellation on the nighttime sky. Here in Virgo, label the bright blue star Spica. That's going to be one of our reference points. And then here in academic astronomy only, we do label this bright star at the base of the Maiden's V. This one is Porrima. I gave you the Bayer name of it, but that's where she actually is. That's Porrima. Okay, up here to Boötes, let's label Arcturus. Now, a little bit about it. It is an orangish yellow supergiant star, and it's actually the 5th brightest star in the sky. In fact, everybody, Arcturus is so bright that sometimes when I'm stargazing in the spring, I just have to do a double check to make sure I'm not looking at the planet Venus because Arcturus is so darn bright. Also on this chart, this is the only object we are going to learn twice this year. This is M51, the Whirlpool Galaxy. You might remember this is the spiral galaxy that if you look at it in astrophotographs is nom, 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 nom. It's eating and cannibalizing a little irregular right beside it. By the way, if you noticed on your full chart, we also know this part. This is the tail end of Ursa Major, and so this is actually part of the Big Dipper asterism. Notice there's the famous double star, or visual binary of Alcor and Mizar. So there sits M51. Unlike M44, you cannot see this one with the naked eye. You need a pretty good telescope to see it, like what we have out at the Mount Lion Observatory. Finally, Astro Teens, and this is the first time we're doing this, with a dotted line like what we do with our asterisms, I would like us to add a silly but very important saying. So here's how it goes down. Notice the handle of the Big Dipper is like an arc. So the silly saying goes, we follow the arc to Arcturus, and then we spin on down, or we drive a spike to Spica. We arc to Arcturus, and we spin on down to Spica. It's very silly, but very effective. I've used this many times on the real spring sky to help get myself oriented. Okay, get one last look. Here's everything I'll expect to see on the right-hand side of your star chart for springtime. And this, everybody, should be the very last season you have to put on the star chart. Sadly, since we're not in the planetarium, you will not get the long-promised SCOO3 charts, which are for the south circumpolar sky down in this area. So this is going to be it for all of you. So let's finish strong, and give me a really, really good spring season. You're going to take pictures of both your charts, and then you're going to attach it on Google Classroom for 10 points each. So, for Mr. Krug, hope you enjoy the springtime sky. Peace!